Okay, so now that we've got our wallets connected, we can actually move to kind of the core of 8pin, and that's to post transactions to Arweave. And when we look at our 8pin application, basically we spin up the ability to drop a pin by right-clicking on the map, or if you're in mobile, you just press and hold. And then this is our 8pin form. So we'll take a title, description, a photo, and a location, and a date time. And then we submit that. And when we call submit, we transform that using our model function into a transaction. And then we call this submit function here. And it's got an object with, and we destructure the object into data and tags. And data is our photo, and then tags is our 8pin protocol that we want to add to the system. So in order to implement this, we'll use the Arweave SDK, and we need to also use our wallet, and we need to create a transaction, sign the transaction with our wallet, and then post the transaction onto the network. So the first step we're going to do is check and see if a wallet is defined. So we're going to say if window.arweave wallet equals undefined, and we'll make sure Windows defined as well. Then we're going to return OK false message wallet not connected. So this will just tell our form that there's not a wallet, and it can display a message to the user to connect. The second thing we'll do is get the balance of the wallet that's connected, as we want to make sure there's enough AR in the wallet in order to do the transaction. So we're gonna call get balance, and we need a wallet address. So we're gonna call um, window.arweave wallet get address active address. All right. Okay. Now that we've got the balance, now we're just going to do a try catch, and in case we fail, we're going to return OK false, and then the TX ID if it exists, and then the message of the error. Okay, so first thing we need to do is create a transaction. So we will use Arweave dot create transaction, and it takes an object, and we're going to provide our data as part of that object. So this is the starting of creating our transaction. And then the next thing we need to do is add tags to that transaction. So we're going to do tags.map, and for each tag that has a name and a value, we're going to call tx.add tag and pass in the name and value. So that will add all of our 8pin protocol tags to the transaction. And now we're going to sign it. So we're going to do an await and call Arweave transactions dot sign, and then pass in our transaction. Now, you may see examples where it asks for the wallet, but because we're connected to either the Arweave.app wallet or the RConnect wallet, the Arweave SDK will recognize that and then use each one of those wallets, or make a remote procedure call to each one of those wallets to request a signature. And then when it comes back, our TX will be signed. So we could log TX and we would see a signature um, uh, property on there showing that it was signed by a wallet. Um, Now, what we want to do is check and see if the cost of the wallet, the fee, right, for the transaction. I'm sorry, we're going to check and see if the fee for the transaction is greater than the balance of the wallet. And if it is, then we want to return, okay, false, message, not enough AR to complete the request. Okay. And then if that's all good, we're going to get this uploader object because we could have fairly large images. So it may have to make multiple calls to update all the data. And what we want to do is be able to show like a little progress bar in our app showing that this is happening. So we're going to use this method called get uploader. And we pass in the TX. So this is the equivalent of us posting the transaction onto the network, and it's going to return this uploader object that we'll be able to look at and see the percentage progress, and we can display that on the screen to show the progress of the upload. So we'll pass OK, true, uploader, and txid equals tx.id, right? And that's our submit function. So let's give that a spin. So we'll go disconnect, go to about, explore, go back to about, allow. And let's just start at the beginning. Okay. So we'll connect and we'll use arweave.app and connect our wallet. And now we're going to create a pin. Let's create it in Somerville here. We'll just say, hello world, my first pin. Give it an image. We'll use Mr. Ribbons. Sweet. And then our location, we could click get current location if we want to use our current location, and we'll do a date and a time. And then we're going to hit submit. So it's going to ask us to accept the transaction. So now it's signing the transaction with all these tags, and we're going to hit accept. And oh, not enough R to complete the request. Let's try again. So there's not enough R. And what we need to do, since we're using our wallet on our test network, I'm going to go to arweave.app, and I'm going to grab my wallet address right here, and I'm going to go to my Visual Studio Code terminal down below here, and let me just move that up a little bit, hit clear, and I'm going to do curl localhost 1984 /mint, and then I'm going to paste my address for my wallet, and then I'm going to do another slash, and I'm going to do like 1 billion, trillion, whatever, a lot of zeros here. So I'm going to do that and mint enough AR, and make sure you add a lot of zeros because the kind of the cost of the DevNet AR is slightly different than the cost of mainnet. So Um, we can go and check our balance by doing curl localhost 1984 wallets slash paste our wallet, and I think it's just balance. I can't believe I forgot this. Um, I can't remember it right now, but we'll go back. I'm pretty sure we added enough. And I need to look up that command, but maybe it's wallet. Maybe it's wallet instead of wallets, plural. There we are, wallets. Okay. Now this is in the atomic unit of Winston, and not AR. So there's a couple of utility commands that we can use to convert from Winston to AR and from AR to Winston. And we'll show that in a little bit. So now that we got enough in our wallet, let's see if we can't drop a pin. Okay, so we're back on our interface. We'll select Mr. Ribbons again. And we got hello world, my first pin, location, date, time. Let's hit submit. Okay, we're going to sign the transaction and we've uploaded it. Now we're verifying it and there's our pin. Sweet. Hello world, my first pin. Now we have this view pin, and what we have to do is implement the get transaction where we want to get the transaction via GraphQL and also get the data. Um, so um, let's work through that with a single transaction. So we look at our example here. And just a note, one thing we're also doing is this wait for method. So once we post the transaction, it's going to return, success done, but we want to make sure that we query the transaction via GraphQL and make sure that we get a valid transaction ID, right? So once we validate that we're getting a transaction ID, then we found that and we know that it's actually on Arweave. Otherwise, it could have failed for some reason or another. Um, cool. So let's get a single transaction. And in the same file that we did our submit, we have this get TX for a single transaction. And we're going to post to GraphQL and query using the transaction query method, passing the ID of the transaction ID. It's going to return the ID, the owner address, and the tags. So it looks like it's all coded up for us, which is cool. It's one less thing we have to do. And let's see if it works. So we've got our query. Let's hit view pin, and there we go. Hello world, our first pin, the date. We've got Mr. Ribbons here, all showing up very nicely. So that is get transaction, and yeah, it's already coded for us, so we didn't have to do any work, which is awesome. Now, for one of the coolest parts is the ability to, but before I do that, let me show you how to convert AR to Winston and Winston to AR. So I'm just gonna fire up a node in the terminal here, and I'm gonna bring in Arweave. And I'm going to create Arweave by doing arweave.init. And so when I don't pass anything, it's just going to connect to localhost. And now, um, if I wanted to use some utilities to convert Winston to AR or AR to Winston, I can do await arweave.ar and say Winston to AR. And then we can give it a string of one, bazillion, trillion, jillion, whatever. And then it will print out how much AR that is. And then to go backwards, if I want to do AR to Winston, I can just do 10 and we get the amount in the atomic unit. So that's super helpful to do calculations between what AR is and what Winston is, because you want to send everything in from a transactional standpoint via Winston. But it may be easier for you to think of it as AR. Cool. Okay. So the fifth kind of deployment tool we're going to talk about is ARKB, and we'll just go ahead and install it globally, and it's ARKB. And this tool allows us to deploy um, to Arweave, deploy our web application, our decentralized application to Arweave to access it and use it in Arweave, which is really, really cool. Um, so the first thing we need to do though is we need to have a wallet locally on the system. And what I'm going to do is create that wallet programmatically using Node. So we'll just open up Node and, oops, we'll say Arweave equals require Arweave. We'll do fs equals require fs. And then let's do arweave.init. And we'll use this A to generate a wallet. So we'll say wallet equals A dot wallets dot generate. And I think we need to await it. That. And then if we log out wallet, cool. We've got our wallet. I'll get the hang of this in a minute. Okay. So what we want to do is write that to the local file system. So we'll do fs.write file sync, and we'll do JSON. Well, let's give it a name, my wallet.json, and we'll say json.stringify wallet, and that should write it locally. And let's see. Cool. My wallet.json. It's right there. And the last thing we want to do is get the address because we want to mint it. So let's do this. We're going to say, well, we can do it. Yeah, we want to get the address. So const address equals await. And we'll say arweave.wallets get address, and then we pass in our wallet. And if we print out the address, that's it right there. Okay, so now we want to say arweave.api.get mint, just like we did via curl, address, and then we're going to use AR to Winston 10 as the amount of AR we want to mint, and then in the quotes and do that, and we can do an await. Cool. So we minted it. Let's check our balance. Oops. Await a wallet. Get balance. I think it's wallet, right? And or its address. There we go. Um, let's make that a little bit easier to read. So we'll say const result equals await, and then console log r.data. Can't read data. Okay, let's get out of that. Okay. Yeah. So I think we successfully minted some balance. We'll find out. Now that we've installed ARKB, we're going to deploy to our AR local. So we're in the app folder. We want to say yarn build to build the production version of our app. And then we're going to say ARKB deploy the disk folder, because when we build it, it puts everything in the disk folder here, our app. And then we're going to use our wallet that we just created, mywallet.json. And then we're going to say for the gateway, we want to use HTTP localhost 1984. And with that, now one of the things that we can do, well, let's go ahead and just deploy this now. So with that, we'll push that up. Okay, we don't have enough balance for this address. So maybe I was doing something wrong there. Let's do curl localhost 1984. You know what? It may have been connected to mainnet, so that might be it. Met, and we'll give it our address, and then a large sum of AR. Cool. Now let's deploy. Okay. All right. So one thing about ARKB, the way the Permaweb works is it generates this manifest file. And this manifest file contains kind of the router information of your app. So this arweave.manifest here will contain all the route information for your app, and then it'll deploy each piece of your app as a transaction ID, and then deploy the final transaction ID as the manifest. And when the Permaweb reads that, it knows when it needs to go to 8pin-logo2.png. It maps to this transaction ID here. which is great. Um, this is a really, really cool feature. So what we'll do is hit yes to upload, and it's deployed. And you can see that the ID of the app is the ID of the manifest here. And we can also take a look at our manifest here in the dist folder and kind of see that the first node of it is Arweave pass and the version, and then it's got like index, and then the path to the index is index.html, and then all the other paths are defined by their name and then their transaction ID. So it basically, since your app is just data, this manifest kind of converts it into data on Arweave. And now when you access, let's go to this ID in our Arweave network. Notice I'm going to 1984. And if I just do a slash and paste my transaction ID on there, I am running our 8-pin app that we built on our local Arweave network. And you can see that, and I can go to connect with a wallet, and I can view the pin that I just created. How cool is that? So basically, I've got my data and I've got my application all on the Permaweb, and it will be there forever. Once I deploy it, it's there forever, for better or worse, which is really, really cool. So we just walked through deploying it locally. It's the exact same process to deploy to the Permaweb, except you leave this gateway bit out of it, right? And it will prepare and start to deploy. Now, what it's going to do as it figures this out, it's going to say, I don't have enough AR because I just generated that wallet and I only gave it AR in our DevNet. Um, but if you take a wallet and you send some AR to it, right? Then you could deploy. So I could send some AR, and basically the total would be 0.0003, which is less than a penny. I don't know. It's less than a penny. It's really not a lot. Um, and then I could deploy that. Maybe I will try that. Let's see. Don't know how long it'll take. Maybe give it a shot here. So we'll send to this new address we created some AR, and let's just send 50 cents, right? That's 0.2. That should be plenty. And we'll hit submit. Okay. So that's sending the transaction. May take a while, depending on how busy Arweave is. But like once it's there, we can use it to deploy to the Permaweb. Now, another thing we might want to do is, as you deploy multiple versions of your product, you may want to tag them. So we can use tag name, and we can give it, what I've been doing is deploy. So then that way I can use GraphQL and find all of the transactions that have a tag name deploy and a tag value of 8-pin. And that will, help me find all my deployments of 8-pin. And then I can, provide kind of a revision history to users in an about page or something like that. Um, let's see if we have success. See how long it takes to send the transaction. So we'll try that. And while we're trying that, we'll just kind of go through a quick summary of everything we've done in the tutorial. So we learned how to use AR local for development. We went through a little bit of GraphQL and kind of learned how to query tags on the block weave. We also learned some of the core features of Arweave JS, like how to create a transaction, how to query using GraphQL, how to sign and post a transaction, how to convert AR to Winston and Winston to AR. We also learned about protocols and this powerful idea of public protocols instead of data models, and how we can create a rich competitive ecosystem for core functionality and share functionality across applications, which is very powerful. We learned how to use Arweave.app as a wallet, as well as RConnect as a wallet, how to submit a transaction for 8pin, and how to wait for the response to make sure that it gets posted onto the network, and then how to deploy with AR local, and how to deploy using ARKB to our local DevNet, as well as how to use it to deploy to production. So let's go over and see. We still don't have enough. Let's try one more time to see if we can't get this to work. And nope, it just doesn't have enough balance. But basically, once you add enough to your wallet, it just takes a little time for these things to process. Let's see the transaction. So it says that it's done, but it's only one confirmation. So it's going to need a couple more confirmations on here. Maybe we'll try one more time. I imagine that ARKB is looking for more confirmation. Oh, there we go. It's here. Cool. So we just hit yes, and there it is. It's deployed to rweave.net. So we can hit command click and open this. I'm just going to copy it. For some reason my open doesn't work. And we can open a new tab. Now we are on the mainnet, rweave.net. We've got our transaction ID. I hit enter, and hopefully we'll see our 8pin app pop up. It does take a few seconds to kind of load all of those assets. Yeah, it's not quite there yet. Um, give it some time. Um, so one of the things with this approach, by building a block directly on Arweave, is there's a lot of things adding to it all the time. So there's a really great tool called Bundler Network that really makes it super fast to add your applications to Arweave. It uses this bundling technology, and you can actually use that in RKB. And the way that you go about using that is by sending some funds to Bundler as a balance, kind of a deposit, and then you can use those funds to deploy to Bundler, and literally it's instantaneous when it deploys your app to Arweave. I mean, it is, I mean, it's seconds, uh, if not sooner. Let's see if this thing gets here. Think we may make it this time. There it is. Cool. So there's our app on Arweave, and we can connect. Now, because we're on the main net, we're going to see. Oh, yeah. Okay. Cool. So there it is. And hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And, one thing to remember of note is that when you do go to deploy to production, make sure you remove these environments or set it to the production environment, because what I just did there was set this to my local environment, and that's why it shows up like that instead of like the production 8-pin. So cool. Thank you, and hope this tutorial helps you get started with Arweave, because it's a lot of fun, and hopefully, as you can see, even the basics is super powerful. And great.